Order at 5:06. This is the business meeting of the School District of Indian River County, Tuesday, March 9th, 2021. Would you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that we have a meeting that will begin at 6 o'clock. If we have not been able to finish the business meeting at around 10 minutes to 6, I will call a recess, which will allow the staff to rearrange the room for our meeting. We have a joint meeting with the NAACP Executive Committee, and when that meeting is concluded, I will reconvene the school board and complete the business meeting agenda. Are there any items board members wish to move from consent to action? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the orders of the day?
Oh, Mr. Barefoot?
Yes.
I don't have anything to move. I want to add.
All right.
To the discussion, I'd like to add the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer and Equity Trainer positions to the discussion.
All right. So I would like a motion to approve the orders of the day with that having been added.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
I thought we agreed this afternoon the superintendent was going to make a statement about that.
I'd like to put it on the discussion.
Okay, that's fine.
Move approval. Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next item is a citizen input. The public may offer public comments by appearing in person. Such persons will be placed in the meeting room subject to space availability. Additional attendees will be placed in areas outside the meeting room and invited into the meeting room at the appropriate time. Alternatively, the public may offer public comments by emailing comments to the following email address: citizeninput march9@indianriverschools.org. All public comment emails must include a completed speaker's form available below the fillable and PDF formats. All emails must have the completed speaker's form attached, or the public comment submission will not be considered. All emails containing public comment with a completed and attached speaker's form received by 12 p.m. on March 9, 2021, will be provided to all school board members prior to the meeting and will be appended to the meeting minutes. The public is advised this email address will be used solely for obtaining public comments for the board meeting and should not be used for other purposes or questions. Person may only speak once about any given item consistent with Board Policy 0169.1. Guidelines. As a reminder, each statement made by a member of the public shall be limited to 3 minutes duration. Persons will be recognized in the order in which the requests were received. Persons may speak for up to 3 minutes at the beginning of the business meeting during citizen input, as indicated in the order of business, and for up to 3 minutes to each action item during the action agenda, and each board member discussion item as indicated in the order of business. Persons may only speak once about any given item. The time period may be extended by the presiding officer. Only the individual submitting a speaker form is allowed to address the board. Time may not be yielded to other speakers. So at this time, we have a request for, it looks like, 4 individuals present that wish to speak, and I will call their names in the order in which the request was received. And Susan Mahil, you are the first speaker. Back at the podium.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I have to say that I'm somewhat new to the whole discussion I followed it in the news regarding various issues that we've had dating back to I have a new puppy and that almost sounds like it. Dating back to the 60s. But obviously, as you may know, and the board members know, the recent publication of a job description for a chief equity and diversity chief officer. And I understand that it was a relatively high salary range for that position, piqued my interest. And I'm a little disappointed that I understand some people believe that there's political motivation to those who may not agree with this position. I'm also a little dismayed that some people say we've attached racial issues to it. When it was described to me by some officials in the county that this came up due to the segregation order and then the pursuant negotiations that went on for years and years, and that there's still problems and they need to be addressed. I didn't put any racial issue to it. It appeared that the problems, which were not stated in that description, the goals were not stated in the description, the benchmarks for achievement weren't stated in the description, but there are, and as I think there are in counties all over the country, at times disparities between racial and sometimes sexual learning ability, grades, graduation rates, suspension rates, et cetera. And those need to be addressed. And I don't think there's anybody around here that thinks that they shouldn't be. I think we all strive for what we used to call equality in learning, that we all have the same facilities, teacher quality, curriculum quality, so that kids can excel and graduate and go on to be successful community members. I don't think that any of us question that. What I'm wondering about is this new term that's been developed over the last few years called equity, because I see it as the opposite of equality. I see it as using an equity lens, whatever that is, to look at students and teachers and staff differently and separately. And so I've sent some letters to the board. They know how I feel. I really think that we need to take a step back. I think this community, before it sees you all hiring a person to fill this type of position with this type of job description, which frankly, I've been in management a long time and I've never seen a job description like that. To fill it, you need to explain more about the challenges that this county has. And maybe, Dr. Moore, you've done that already and I've missed it, but how do we show improvement after we pay this much for a position? How does this board know that the taxpayers, who they owe a fiduciary responsibility to, are getting their money's worth? I would strongly encourage you to consider taking some of this cash and giving it to people like Freddie Woolfolk and the Boys and Girls Clubs, who on the ground, in the communities, inspire, tutor, and role model these kids and turn out a lot of successful students, and not somebody coming in with a master's degree and deciding how to infuse our curriculum with equity.
Ms. Maciel, your time's up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Steve Jones. I remind you of the 3-minute rule, please.
On mask mandates, a recent study by Research Square has been published using data from Germany's first registry, recording the experience of children are having wearing masks. Using this data on 25,000 children, the researchers discovered interesting information. There were 24 types of health issues reported that were associated with wearing masks that fell into the categories of physical, psychological, and behavioral issues. They recorded symptoms that included, quote, irritability, headache, difficulty concentrating, less happiness, reluctance to go to school, malaise, impaired learning, and drowsiness or fatigue, end quote. Added to these concerning symptoms, they also found 29% reported feeling short of breath, 26% being dizzy, 17% were unwilling to move or play. Hundreds more experienced, quote, accelerated respiration, tightness in the chest, weakness, and short-term impairment of consciousness, end quote. By the way, I've emailed my presentation in, and it's referenced and footnoted. Here's a mask timeline. In February 2020, Surgeon General Jerome Adams tweeted urging Americans to stop buying masks, saying that they are not effective. Adams also said that if worn or handled improperly, masks can increase your risk of infection. In March of 2020, Dr. Fauci stated people should not be walking around with masks because, quote, it's not providing the protection that people think it is, end quote. Of course, he later recanted. By June 2020, universal mask mandates became the norm, and we were told we had to wear them because there may be asymptomatic super spreaders among us. But that same month, the WHO stated that asymptomatic transmission was, quote, very rare, end quote. Toward the end of November 2020, the asymptomatic spread narrative was effectively destroyed by the publication of a Chinese study involving nearly 10 million individuals, revealing not a single case of COVID-19 could be traced to an asymptomatic individual who had tested positive. From the start, the available research has been consistent. Mask wearing does not reduce the prevalence of viral illness, number one. Number two, asymptomatic spread is exceedingly rare, if not non-existent. The virus is aerosolized and spreads through the air. Aerosolized viruses, especially SARS-CoV-2, which is about half the size of influenza virus, cannot be blocked by a mask. Dr. Dennis Rancourt conducted a review of the published science on mask and viral transmission, and he writes, quote, none of these well-designed studies found a statistically significant advantage of wearing a mask versus not wearing a mask, end quote. A 2020 guidance memo by the World Health Organization pointed out that, quote, at present, there is no direct evidence on the effectiveness of universal masking of healthy people in the community to prevent infection with respiratory viruses, including COVID-19. I encourage the school board to follow the science, lift the school mask mandate that is protecting no one while harming our children.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next speaker, Don Wilkerson.
Good evening. My name is Dawn Wilkerson. I'd like to start by sharing that there is a study titled The Impact of COVID-19 on Pediatric Mental Health, and it was put together by a nonprofit organization called Fair Health. What they found was disturbing. What is happening has had a profound impact on the mental health of young people as they face school closures, having to learn remotely, and isolating from friends due to social distancing. These have been sources of stress and loneliness, the study revealed. Children are 10 times more likely to die from suicide than the coronavirus they're meant to be protected from. I don't know if you guys heard that, but that's 10 times more likely to die from suicide. I personally know 3 teenagers who have considered suicide in 2020. This is alarming and also heartbreaking. Drug overdoses are also up too. This virus has a 95 to 99.7 recovery rate depending on your age. If you're under age 20, the survival rate is 99.97%. So I would ask, why are we continuing with masks, social distancing, and quarantining our healthy children? Our children aren't the only ones being negatively affected by this also. Our teachers are. I have several friends in our county who are teachers and realize that none of these measures are working, but they are making things worse. One of my friends actually just quit teaching last week because he is sick from headaches daily and from wearing a mask. They're causing his headaches. He loves teaching, he loves his students, but he had to quit what he loves because his health is suffering from the mask. Many of my teacher friends would be here tonight to speak if they didn't feel that their job would be in jeopardy from speaking out against all the unnecessary measures in our school. I would ask that you please make masks optional. Please stop the social distancing and stop quarantining our healthy children. On another note, I would also like to voice my concern with our district hiring a Chief Equity and Diversity Officer. I also believe that our money could be spent better. I would also like to hear more about this position from you. I feel like a lot of us are, basically we don't know much about the position. I would love for you to address these issues presented tonight. I know that you can talk to me, and I would really appreciate if you would. When you don't engage in open dialogue with concerned parents and citizens that are here tonight, your silence does speak volumes. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Chris Allen.
Hello. I'm reading from a study from the Morbidity and Mortality Weekly Report, and this is Association of State-Issued Mask Mandates and Allowing On-Premises Restaurant Dining with County-Level COVID-19 Case and Death Rates. This is from March 1st to December 31st of last year. During March 1st through December 31st, 2020, state-issued mask mandates applied in roughly 73% of the U.S. counties. Mask mandates were associated with a 0.5% point decrease in daily COVID case growth rates 1 to 20 days after implementation, and decreases ranging from 1.1 to 1.8% after implementation. So, and this is all within the error. I mean, I used to design pressure relief valves for tank trailers. So how would you feel if you have a pressure relief valve that has a 1.5% chance of actually working? And that's within error. Usually if you get a number from a company, there's usually a plus or minus associated with it. So this is basically what you guys have been allowing, masking our children, giving them headaches. It's affecting them psychologically, all for a potential 1.5% chance of reducing anything. I go back to the quote about repetition. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Like, it's not doing anything. Florida has done much better than New York and California, even though we lifted our mask, even though our governor never had a mask mandate implemented. I'm not asking the school board to let children cough on each other, but instead recommending proper cough etiquette and is as efficient as wearing a mask, especially if it's only a 1.5% chance of it working. Virus particles are airborne. Maybe by now you've seen videos of people in cold weather, and you could still see their breath going through the mask, or they could just blow through it. You mentioned a scientific process a while back because one of your excuses was to not let children be on optional masking if you're going to bring more students in. Well, it's almost been a year since all this started. The school year is almost done. What are you waiting for? What's your conclusion? Like, we've heard nothing from you. The lawsuit's gone. You're only stopping yourselves from speaking. At least from what I've heard, it's silence from all of you. That's it.
Thank you. We also have two emails. Ms. Millman, would you care to read the emails, please?
Our first email is from Jennifer Pippin. Good evening. My name is Jennifer Pippin, one of the admins for We the People Indian River County and chairman for Moms for Liberty Indian River, Florida. I have 2 children in the school district and fighting for all of the parents and children who cannot fight due to their professions or lack of public speaking, too scared to suffer from the public ridicule, or the ones who have given up because after a year into a virus, their voice has gone unheard. First, I would like to mention that submitting a public comment via email through board docs for the school board meeting is extremely difficult and almost impossible on a phone. I'm out of town, and if you honestly want to hear from public, this needs to be corrected, please. I know many parents who have trouble with this, and the fillable PDF doesn't work on a smartphone, and it's hard to navigate from board docs, SDIRC website, and the public input information. Try it for yourselves on your cell, and you will see exactly what I'm talking about if you truly value the public's input. Our children who are being quarantined for possible exposure to someone who has tested positive for COVID-19 are still going home with no instruction. Again, we are a year into this virus, 7 months into the school year, and still this issue has gone unresolved. I've spoke up via email, calls, school board meetings, along with many other parents, and we are one of the only counties who does not teach their children via virtual when a student gets quarantined. We have had over 2,000 students quarantined in our district, and not one has had any teacher instruction in the last 10 days currently, or 14-day period, first semester of school. Our children are suffering from this. I experienced it firsthand with my daughter when she was quarantined twice last quarter. It's added stress on the teachers to keep up with their scheduled classes, quarantine students, and my suggestion was months ago to have the teachers put the laptops in their room on live and have children be able to log in virtually to learn and not fall behind. How are we only one of the counties with a budget of $250 million and $3.3 million of CARES Act money can't make teaching our children virtually when they get quarantined a priority? Finally, once again, no comment or discussion at the school board meeting when a group of parents brought their concerns to you about still masking our children for a virus that has been here for a year. Masking for the entire 7 months since school started, many children only wearing masks at school. You have already lost many great families to homeschooling and virtual schooling all year because of this. So again, I ask, when do the adult politics of masking stop for the health and safety of our children? When does it become optional and value parental rights as we and our children's pediatricians know what's best for our children? I'm asking you as a taxpayer, mother, and concerned citizen. The next email is from Nikki Hope. I hope I get a fast reader, but just in case, I'll try to get straight to the point. There is no room for radicalism. Please put the innocence of our children as your first priority. I was one that cleaned everything down before even entering my home while changing gloves after every wipe. I was terrified. I have an immune disorder, but even more than that, I have God, our Creator. I pray and hope our school boards never lose sight of our God-given rights. I know each one of you care for our children, so I'm going to ask that each of you take this into deep consideration because it's something that haunts me every day. My child has been in virtual school since day one. Great, amazing teacher, but out of nowhere, we were told that she is being put somewhere else and my child would be going to another virtual class with a teacher not from their school with 28 plus kids instead of minus 20. In no way were the children or parents considered, and that teacher's accomplishments with her students weren't even recognized. My only choice was to send my child back to make sure they didn't start falling behind. As any child, going back has been amazing nourishment, but has it really? They are being limited from oxygen that is so crucial at this age and forced to breathe in their fumes their bodies naturally let out. I told my child to remove the mask any chance they got to try to avoid toxins as much as possible. How would you like to know the response I got? That's why you can't stay in a greenhouse for too long or else you'll get sick. I had to send my child to school after that. Masks were never safe pre-COVID. How dare we believe it works now? With all due respect, is anyone familiar with Gitmo? Are you aware in 2002, as a form of torture, they made prisoners wear gloves, goggles, headphones, and surgical masks for sensory deprivation? We are doing so much damage, and no one is comfortable enough to admit it. Why? False fear. It is no way, shape, or form fair knowing all this and how little they transmit this lab-made thing with a 99.7% survival rate. The fear needs to stop. It's about compliance, not our health. Have a carbon monoxide meter, put it under your mask and see if you still feel safe. You know smiles can be contagious. Our children can't see that though. They are forced to not learn full facial recognitions and particular qualities that can only be met through seeing their peers' faces. Full facial emotions, good or bad, sad, mad, happy, joyful, excited, confused, tired, annoyed, bothered. They are all different in its own way, and they can't express it or experience it. We are allowing these children to be damaged in such a way no one will acknowledge. I'm asking you to acknowledge it and respect my parental rights as I respect each one of you.
That concludes citizen input. I would just like to remind all community members, both that are here and watching, that you're encouraged to, always encouraged to contact school principals, district staff to resolve any issues that crop up in a timely fashion and not wait until the next school board meeting.
Mr. Barefoot.
Yes,
Board members can respond to public comment. I'd like to.
sure.
Is it Mrs. Mayhew?
Mahil.
Yes. Meal, thank you. I appreciate you coming here. I read your email. You're referring to the comment I made this afternoon with the political and racial issues. And the comment wasn't directed at you. It wasn't directed at a lot of the emails I got. It was directed at some of the conversations I had over the last week. There were people that said things that I said, I would invite you to come and say that on that microphone on a camera. And they said they wouldn't. That tells you how heated this can be. It's unfortunate. And you're saying that it's not a political and racial issue? I'm sorry. It has become that, unfortunately. It shouldn't be, you're right. It shouldn't be. So we had a long discussion about it this afternoon. I guess we're gonna have another one tonight. But I've asked the superintendent this afternoon to please communicate this better as to what we're trying to do, why this position's out there, why this money is being spent this way. And are we spending more money, or are we going to reorganize and spend less money? So he has promised that he is going to communicate that.
Okay.
Just want to do a little clarifying as we finish public comment. In terms of social emotional support, I think this district has been bold and aggressive in terms of the layers of support it has provided. School counselors in each and every single elementary school, which did not exist prior to COVID. Social emotional success coaches in our middle schools, additional allocation of counselors in our middle school, created and implemented a program called Acclimate and Accelerate. So we anticipated the social emotional impact of COVID and students being out of school for such an extended period of time. And priority number one was to acclimate students back into the classroom, back into the environments. It has been a level of intentionality from the beginning of the school year. Our school, our teachers in our schools have always been intentional in looking at our students, ensuring that we are maximizing every opportunity to allow them to feel safe and secure. It is a prerequisite for learning. As it relates to students missing instruction associated with being a quarantine, I think, once again, of the 67 districts in this county, this is the only school board that said, you know what, Dr. Moore, go and be aggressive with the county, the health department, and see what legal action we can take regarding quarantine. This school board did that. And the response was that there was nothing much that we could do. But we maximize the opportunity in this district. We inspect what we expect. And it was a point of conversation in November. Went back and we created, under the leadership of Mr. Meyer and our school principals, what we call instructional advocates. These are intentional assignments where teachers are reaching out, counselors are reaching out to students on quarantine, saying, hey, how is it going? Are you getting everything that you need? Or is there any support that we need to provide? So a great deal of work. We continue to survey parents and speak with them through our advocacy office. It is clearly expected. If there are parents not getting what they need during quarantine, that information needs to come to me, because it's been something that we addressed. This is not a system that says, well, we did it and it's okay. If we did something and it's not working, we will pivot, we will modify, and we will ensure that we're providing instruction. So it was Mr. Meyer also working with principals, speaking with principals. Are you having issues? Are you hearing things from your parents? Are we being responsive to parents? So there's no such thing as a perfect school system or a perfect anything, for that matter. But we're very intentional about the quality of support that is being provided to our parents. And parents, if you're listening and you're not finding that to be the reality, please reach out to your principals tomorrow. This is a school system where we are here to listen and respond. So those are just some of the things as it relates to the masking. We are making drastic steps to moving to an environment where we're closer to normal. I mean, this Saturday, we were probably the first system, once again, the first system to coordinate an entire event, an entire day for our 50-plus employees, if they so chose, to have their vaccination. That is a great first step. That is the first step. And as I report back to the board, you can't find other districts engaging in that conversation. But as I told you, now that conversation's going to begin. So we're excited about the progress that we're seeing. It's slow. It's not nearly as fast as I would like it or any of you would like it, but we're starting to see that traction as we continue to fight to get to normal. There are systems all over the district fighting not to have prom. We're having prom. We're having graduation. We're having after sporting events. We're having after school events. We're running the full gamut of services and support for our students. We're in the midst of a hard, complex time, but it will not diminish to the point that we allow it to diminish the quality of education and experience we provide for our students. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. All right, moving right along with the agenda, the next item is approval of the consent agenda. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
Ms. Berenberg?
I'll second.
Dr. Schiff?
Me.
Mr. Rosario? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
Mr. Barefoot?
Yes, ma'am.
With that, I'd just like to point out a thank you to all of the people that donated. There were $205,000 of donations this month, which is incredible. I'd just like to say thank you to the Beachland families to help Beachland. Thank you to Mark's Air Conditioning for helping Vero Beach High School. Thank you to the Ed Foundation for the Step Into Kindergarten programs. Thank you to the Moose Lodge 1822 for the Wabasso School donation. Thank you to Dyer Auto for the Sebastian River High School donation. And thank you to Tina and Christopher Torres for the Sebastian River donation. We appreciate all those donations. Thank you.
All right, we now have a public hearing and adoption of school board policy. As a reminder, on January 26, 2021, the board moved approval to set a public hearing date to adopt the revised school district board policy. The purpose of this new policy is to establish a foundation to seek community funding for specific district projects. The policy process was followed in accordance with Florida statutes under Florida Administrative Procedures Act, Chapter 120, Rulemaking, and School Board Bylaw 0131. This item, the adoption of new district school board policy, Dr. Moore, have you documented that this public hearing was properly advertised and according to state statutes? Yes, sir. All right, now, I'm going to recess the meeting to conduct public hearing as advertised. The public session is now open. Is there anybody here who would like to speak? Hearing no one wishing to speak on the adoption of this new district school board policy has been conducted pursuant to notice, and an ample opportunity to address this issue has been provided to all. The school board meeting is now reconvened at this time. May I have a motion to
I'll make
I'll
a
make a
motion.
motion.
Mrs. Rosario, a second.
I'll second.
Mrs. Berenborg, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Can I speak to the motion?
The
Yes, you
first
may.
person.
Okay. Yeah.
I'd like to, yeah. You ready, Mr. Barefoot?
Sure.
This is exciting because we now get to start on this new project, essentially working through this policy I brought to the board in the fall of 2019, just before Dr. Moore joined us. Dr. Moxley was here, and I went to the previous board went to an FSBA conference. At that FSBA conference, one of the workshops that I attended was one that was shared by Orange County's school district, and they presented on their foundation, their educational foundation, which wasn't an outside foundation. It was one that was created specifically within the school district, and it was absolutely phenomenal. So of course I brought that back, I shared it with the school board, and I'm so excited that, moving forward, we wanted Dr. Moore to join in, or join the school board. At the time, we were in the process of hiring him. Things got put on hold, obviously, because of COVID, but now we are back at it. And so I am very happy that we are going to begin something that this district really needs. Moving forward, Dr. Moore will now engage in, at the board's direction, creating board of directors who will be a part of this foundation. We will not be in competition with outside organizations. This is going to be something that the school district will be able to raise funds specifically for things that are not taxpayer funded, essentially. Which is really, really exciting, because we get to think outside of the box and provide opportunities for classrooms, for teachers, for students, for just about anything. So without further discussion on this, I'm just very, very happy that we are finally here and that we get to start the work. So if anybody has information or would like to be a part of it, by all means, give us a call, give me a call, give Dr. Moore a call, and we would love to engage in that discussion.
Mrs. Berenberg?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to talk about the item A on there, where it says the Board of Directors will be approved by the school board and shall include the superintendent and the chairman. So if you're sitting on that committee, will it be televised so that if another one of us decide to go to the meeting, we can speak freely?
We have a meeting Monday afternoon with a local lawyer who's an expert on setting up foundations and the manner in which that foundation should relate to, in this case, the school district. A good model would be how the Cleveland Clinic Indian River Foundation relates to the hospital. I would say that that's a hard question to answer as to who should comprise the board of directors. I mean, I understand what the policy says, but it may be amended, or we may come back to amend it, let alone how a board of advisors would work. I think when we discussed this earlier, we were all in agreement that you want broad representation from the community.
Absolutely.
You want folks, and as Ms. Rosario said, the focus here is going to be project capital related, not necessarily program related.
Not capital related. We never said anything about capital related.
It's project related. It's still capital.
It's
still
capital.
money. It's capital related. So.
But when we say capital projects,
Ms. Rosario, will you let me
it's
finish,
different.
please? And so, to your specific question, I think there's probably more work to be done on refining exactly how the governance of this foundation will work and what its relationship to the district will be. And I'm sure we'll be back with an update at our whatever the next meeting is, where it'll go on the agenda.
Yeah, the reason why I bring that up is because none of our other committees include anybody from the board. They usually just they're independent, and then they report to the board, and board members are allowed to go and listen, but we're not allowed to really participate in it.
I think that's one of the questions that have been raised. I had a fairly lengthy discussion with the attorney the other day. I've worked with this guy on the hospital foundation. The structure is really important for a variety of reasons. With the hospital, the foundation rolls up on a consolidated basis with the hospital finances, but it's entirely independent. The reason it's entirely independent is there's no people in the administration of the hospital that sit on the board.
And that's exactly why we do that with our committees.
And the president of the foundation is, however, appointed to the hospital board. That doesn't mean we're going to do it that way, but that's the way it works. And so as a result, all over Indian River County, you have community boards representing various neighborhoods, all part of ultimately rolling up to quite a large board, I think 24 people, and it's a broad cross-section. And it's one of the reasons that over the past 10, 12 years, the foundation has been so successful in supporting that hospital in this community.
Yeah, I think, and you can check with the attorneys, but I think just making it available on camera would allow us, any of us, to be able to go to the meeting and speak. Because otherwise, you've silenced our voices, if you're on the committee.
I don't need to be on another committee.
No, I know, but that, right there, you are.
But
The
I
way it's
think,
stated, you are.
subsequent to that, Dr. Moore and I have had several conversations. I think he's got some guidance from Katie's law firm, at any rate. And Dr. Jones,
Well,
you
I'm just saying,
wanted to speak.
it's good stuff. I mean, when all this gets going, and however many board members we may have, but I just want to reiterate that it reflects our diversity of our population.
Absolutely. Dr. Schiff.
I think Mrs. Rosario had a question before me, and then I'll go.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Schiff. Mr. Barefoot, with all due respect, when the district uses words such as capital or capital funds and capital budget, they're primarily talking about building funds, funds for alarms, funds for, painting, maintenance, things like that. So when we are talking about capital with regard to the foundation, we have to use our words carefully so that we're sure that we're all on the same page. The other thing is that we have not discussed what the funds would be used for. So we also have to be very careful how we respond to the community because we haven't gotten there yet. Right now, we're just at the stage of creating the policy. We haven't moved further in terms of identifying our goals for how those monies are going to be used or when those monies are going to be used or for what purpose, other than the fact that, it should be for items that are not traditionally taxpayer funded, which is why there is a 501c3 to be created at the direction and the advice of Mr. Fagan and our legal team. Dr. Moore can confirm that with me, please, before I.
Well, I think some of the answers to some of the questions that were being asked is we have been working with a number of different districts along with a few different entities are doing this work. We are bringing through board briefings our first opportunity to receive impact from our board members. Then we'll bring it to the upcoming workshop. One of the recommendations to address, as an example, Ms. Barenborg, is very similar to how we just paused the meeting for the public hearing. That could be an opportunity on how we have that, so that doesn't become a concern, meaning we pause the school board meeting, you have the foundation meeting, and then you reconvene the school board meeting. There's a number of opportunities. We have nothing solidified in stone. So we're literally, the good news is, as I think Mr. Barefoot was just saying, we're starting from scratch. So this is the opportunity for us to be the authors in how this organized and how it's designed to meet the needs of what we believe collaboratively, as well as having the biggest impact on students. So I'm excited about what we're bringing and engaging in the conversation over the next month or two to bring this to life, to get this work done.
So I would thank you for that, Dr. Moore, and I would end my comments with agreeing with what Mrs. Barenborg is saying, is that with Mr. Barefoot listed on the policy as being a chairperson or a board or serving on the committee with you and the board members, that it ties everybody else up. And as much as I respect Mr. Barefoot, I am sure, because we cannot have conversations outside of our board meeting, that Mr. Barefoot does not think the same way that I think. And so I would caution, I think Mrs. Barenborg has a good point, that we start to discuss what our other options are for that, because This is a committee or a board-directed effort, and it should be a collection. None of us work independently apart from each other. We cannot make decisions. I could never go forward into the public and make decisions on behalf of the board. I would have to do it on my behalf only, unless given direction from you all and with your blessings. And that's just the way that we do, work professionally. Dr. Schiff?
Yeah, a couple things. In the structure of this, and I know we're in the process of sorting it out, and I probably should have raised this sooner. But also on A, the Board of Directors shall be approved by the school board, include the superintendent and the chairman of the board. If the superintendent is to act in effect as the CEO or to carry out the will of the foundation, if he is also sitting on the Board of Directors, that's potentially a conflict. I've seen it in other boards, where the CEO is a member of the board and has a dual role. So I'd ask us to consider how that's going to work, because I don't think we're clear at the moment. If presumably the superintendent, as in the district, would be charged with managing or carrying out the will of the foundation to benefit the district. If he's sitting on the board, that puts him in a dual capacity, not as the person responsible to the board, but as a member also potentially voting on the actions that he may or may not take at the will of the board. And I think, I have just seen in other organizations where that can get complicated. That's one thing. The second thing is, in reference to what Mrs. Berenborg brought up, for me, I think the issue is not, is it going to be televised? It's, is it going to be noticed? Because in order for us to be able to speak publicly when another board member is present, it has to be noticed as a public meeting, not simply televised where we can't weigh in.
All our committee meetings are noticed, so that wasn't my concern.
If the foundation, so the foundation meeting would be noticed there, in which case, if more than one board member shows up, more than one board member can speak because it's been publicly noticed. That's, like, for the record, different than just having it be televised where we don't necessarily weigh in, but we can see what's going on. Third thing, I don't want any more meetings either. But this is the first I've heard, I really don't, I've got 2 jobs. But this is the first I've heard that anything was set up for Monday. I get that that's a meeting potentially between you, the superintendent, and the legal team to work out the structure of this, but I would have loved to have known about that prior to a public meeting, to be made aware that that was happening, to have an opportunity to participate if I so chose.
Absolutely.
That's all I got for now.
All I can say is there will be, there are options. And from a practical standpoint, having been involved both at the hospital and in other similar related foundations associated with public entities, there's a degree of sensitivity. Yes, there's potential conflicts, and that will be addressed in whatever the final structure that everyone will be made aware of. And maybe there's a couple of options will be provided, and we can discuss those. But I can tell you, if we're sitting there talking about trying to raise money for a specific project, you're talking about people who might donate. And I guarantee you, if you want something to fail, just start mentioning people's names in public that are potential donors to a project. That information is typically kept confidential within the framework of the board and the executive director or staff of any foundation. So let's be careful when we want to have these kinds of discussions in public, because if you do, you're going to have, and a lot depends ultimately on how we pursue the funding of specific projects, whatever they may be, when there's not some degree of confidentiality involved when it comes to prospects and donors.
I have a comment about that. You have to be very, very careful because of sunshine, and any of our committees are also under sunshine.
We know that. That's one of the reasons we're...
That's why I brought that up, because if you're on that committee, then it has to be publicly noticed if we want a chance to speak.
That's why we're having a meeting on Monday with a lawyer who is in a position to advise how this might be structured.
Gotcha.
So that so we have the outcome that we all want.
To that point, I don't think we're all in support of the foundation. We all think it's a terrific idea, and we all totally want it. When I hear you say, we're having a meeting on Monday to make sure it represents what we all want, but if our voices are not represented there, how are we going to know that?
I just said you're going to, there will be options presented, at which point in time, the options, whatever they may be, and maybe there's only one option, that will produce whatever the desired result is. You're certainly we're going to have to amend what this says, because right now, it specifically says the executive director, the chairman of the board, and the superintendent are the three members. It's going to have to be, I'm predicting, it's going to have to be amended for all the reasons that Mrs. Berenborg just said and other questions have been raised. I've lived in this world for many, many years. I know, I don't necessarily know what to do, but I know what not to do. And I think that the attorney we're going to be meeting with as part of the executive committee of the hospital, we've dealt with this individual and other 501c3s in the area. The gentleman is very well versed and will present good advice options, and you will hear about all of that
I don't
perhaps at the next meeting.
disagree with that, but can you clarify who is we who are going to be meeting?
It's Dr. Moore and myself and one other individual, Dr. Moore.
From my staff, Ms. Emerson.
No, from Ms. Emerson, right.
You also, sorry, and then I'll stop. You mentioned an executive director.
It's not in there.
I don't see that on the policy. I see the board of directors shall be approved by the school board, include the superintendent, the chairman of the board, and then what it's going to do, but I don't see anything about an executive director of the foundation.
Well, then there won't be, look, forget the executive director. Forget that it's the chairman of the board. Forget it's the superintendent. We've got a whiteboard. We've got a clean slate. It's going to be recommended on how this thing be structured and what the governance looks like. And whatever the options are, we will bring it back.
And maybe I'm missing
wait a
something,
minute.
because are we premature in approving a
That's right.
policy?
That's-
If it's all going to change? That's what I'm getting confused about.
So if I could just intervene here, the policy gives us the authority to begin the work. Now, my recommendation, a lot of the things you're asking are answers that staff needs to work to provide to you. You don't have to be in the weeds in terms of some of this work. Some of it is pulling together the information and getting the answers for you. So it's a comprehensive presentation. So I think the next step is to allow us the opportunity to present this information, address your questions, hear your questions, and then pull it back through a workshop. You know, this is still a good 5-6 weeks of work in listening and having the dialogue with the board. I assure the board is going to all find a level of comfort with the work that you're doing. Some of the questions you're asking, I don't have the answers yet, but I know I'm meeting with another superintendent Thursday. We have this meeting on Monday. Susan, I'm going to call you, and I got you. And to get all this information, we will put together a solidified program.
Dr. Moore,
I'm going to call a recess. We're expected to start right now with the joint meeting of the NACP. If you can make it 30 seconds.
Dr. Moore, moving forward, we do authorize you, obviously, to do the work with this policy, to begin the work, but please keep in mind that any future appointments or anything regarding this ought to be brought and notified or let all of us know so that we are all on the same page, that not one board member is leading the charge in this. We all need to know what's happening and what's going on. According to this, it is the school board collective that oversees the activity, so we just want to be on the same page. We don't want to be blindsided and be told that, you know, one person is having a meeting on a particular day and we don't have that information.
Meeting's now in recess.